Here we are on the stage. We have Perry Wong, a panelist. We have Serene, Liaw, and Junny and also our moderator. As you can see from the screen here, we have Luk W.X as a lawyer from Hastings LLP, and Perry Wong, the Chief Compliance Officer of ViaBTC Group, and Serene Liaw, Deputy Director of Labuan IBFC, and Junny Executive Director of Casper Ecosystem Foundation. All right, here we are. Once again, a big round of applause and welcome a panelist and a moderator. Come on, a big round of applause. Yeah, for those who have just come over here, the newcomer, right, let us all fill the front seat and together get ready to learn more from our pros on the stage and also the moderator. All right, the stage is yours. All right, one more time, big round of applause, welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this panel titled Labuan as a Strategic Launchpad, Accelerating Digital Asset Services Across Asia. My name is Wenxin, and I'm a US-trained lawyer with experience in cross-border transactions and regulatory compliance in the Asia-Pacific Ocean region. Today, I have the pleasure of serving as your moderator for this session. We are meeting at a time when digital asset regulation is shifting quickly in Asia. Some jurisdictions are tightening up their regulations, and some are opening up, and more are still finding their footing. Amid that, Labuan has steadily built its regulatory framework for Web3 ventures. In this session, we will hear a range of perspectives on how Labuan can enable Web3 ventures, organizations, digital finance platforms, and decentralized projects. I'm joined by an excellent panel of experts today. On my left hand is Perry Wong, previously the Compliance Director for TOCO, the tokenization project of DLA Piper, and now the Chief Compliance Officer at ViaBTC Group, one of the world's top 3 Bitcoin mining pools and developer of the CoinX Web3 ecosystem. He always brings deep regulatory and legal insight into global crypto operations. Welcome. Next is Serene Liaw, Deputy Director at Labuan IBFC, who represents the jurisdiction at the heart of today's conversation and helps shape Labuan's engagement with the fintech and digital asset ecosystem. Welcome as well. And last one is Junny, Executive Director of the Casper Ecosystem Foundation, the CAF, supporting one of the most prominent proof-of-work blockchain ecosystems and offering a direct view into how Web3 projects interact with real regulatory frameworks. Welcome as well. So our first topic today would be about Labuan's role in the new digital finance landscape. As our panel topic suggests, we are here to talk about Labuan, the jurisdiction for fintech or Web3 ventures. Let's start off with Serene to help us understand Labuan and its highlights to how fintech or Web3 companies to achieve global market expansion or operational success.
Hi, thank you, Wenxin. So maybe for the benefits of the audience, I just provide a little bit background of Labuan. So Labuan IBFC, Labuan International Business and Financial Center, is Malaysia's offshore centers. I will use the word offshores, so it's more easier for you, for the audience to appreciate. So typically we are equivalent to when we talk about BVI Cayman, but we are highly compliant in terms of international compliance. So this is somewhat different with BVI and the other offshore centers, I would say. So when it comes to digital finance, we first started was actually back in 2017. So what happened is that during that time, the jurisdiction actually think of what is the best approach for us to move this forward. So we think of when we look at other centers, there are some of them is taking a sandbox approach, and some of them is like maybe we need to push out specific legislations for digital service providers or digital assets issuances or anything about digital finance. Then we realized when it comes to Labuan, we actually have all sorts of solutions that is ready, But however, now then we think of, okay, why not we do this? Then we say we use a normal legacy finance regulatory framework. However, we wrap it with a digital solutions. For an example, when we talk about digital assets or digital exchange, so you can look at Labuan from a money broking platform point of view. But the only thing is that money broking, normally you will deal with fiat currency exchange, but in Labuan, you will then use a exchange of a cryptocurrency. So that is how we works. Yeah, so that is the first thing. And then because of that, why we are doing that? Because when we consult or when we engage with the market, we realize digital space change very fast. Innovations need to be fast. So and hence, we thought this will facilitate quicker from ideations into the market. That is very, very important. So and hence, you are not operate in a sandbox environment. You will then deal directly in a real actual market. So that is what our aim is. But over the times, then we realize the space changed very fast. And hence, there are some other solutions that maybe Labuan couldn't support. Having said that, and hence our regulator said, look, if there are space that we are unable to support, but we are open to it, just come to Labuan, discuss with us, and we will try to make it, try to understand and try to provide a sandbox kind of framework so that when the market is ready, when we are ready as a regulators, I mean as a jurisdictions, that is where we are comfortable and we can push out to the market. So that is where Labuan can offer. Having said that, I think as at first half of 2025, we have more than 100 digital players currently that can be ranged from a very simple digital exchange, custodian, wallet, robo-advisory, or even digital asset issuances or tokenizations. So that is already being licensed and really active in live in the Labuan framework. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights, Serene. So next question would be for Perry. In terms of running a virtual asset service provider, what are the key factors businesses look for in the jurisdictions? In this fast evolving industry, how important is international recognition of a jurisdiction's framework?
Thanks, Wenxin, and thank you, Serene, for the introduction of the entire Labuan framework. It's a very detailed and basically the sandbox perspective, and basically helps from for Web3 businesses to promote their ideation into actually profitable businesses. But coming from a ViaBTC the group perspective, I not only manage the mining pool compliance side and also look at the exchange, our wallet, our chain, and basically the entire ecosystem. So we do look at a lot of jurisdictions in terms of the licensing, the operational requirements, and the cost. And regulatory certainty is another thing that we specifically look at. We don't want any surprises. We don't want any sudden changes in the business model that we have to suddenly adopt and basically have to entirely wipe out our product offerings. So this is one of the main points. And the second of all is the cost, economic substances, labor costs, rental costs as well. Because if I'm only speaking strictly in a compliance perspective, we only will look at the licensing requirements and product offerings, and probably that's it. But at the end of the day, the company's decision relies on the bottom line. So for me, in my role, I have to look after that as well. In terms of jurisdiction's reputation, that is actually another essential consideration. Malaysia and Labuan, well, including in Malaysia, their previous FATF Financial Action Task Force evaluation was done 10 years ago, 2015. And I know that you guys are undergoing the newest round, basically this February, and with the technical documents submitted last year already. And basically reading all the history of it, let's say in the last 2 years, Labuan and Malaysian the regulators have promoted a lot of new regulations, new controls, especially in the ultimate beneficiary transparency mechanism. So basically, it's going to work. You can see that they're working towards a satisfactory or very compliant findings for a conclusion from FedF. And it's important because with the jurisdiction-wise, we want a jurisdiction that is consistent, that is stable, and that we can access a stable, safe banking environment for our customers. So basically, those are all the points that what Web3 businesses looking for, and basically what investors look for as well.
That's very well said. Thank you, Perry. So let's shift gears from the virtual VASP regulations. Junny, with all the buzz around DAOs and new legal wrappers, what are foundations like Caspa Foundation looking for?
Sure. I think this question can be broken in three parts, right? Firstly, about a comparative analysis of why I think Labuan is at least not less competitive than the more familiar regions such as Cayman and BVI. And secondly, why I think Labuan is actually more dynamical, while the other jurisdictions are seemingly more static to having formulation of the rules. And lastly, about the future development foundations. So the first observation we had here is following what Perry just brought to you, that Labuan also has done a lot of legislative efforts to maintain a transparent and stable framework of regulation, right? Like as a foundation part, we sorted out the Foundation Act of Labuan, I think originally proposed in 2010, and of course, and then amended very recently in April 2025, which we believe at least, it's entitled us with a pretty similar or equally advantageous status granted as we would have been granted in other regions such as Cayman or BVI companies. So I think this is quite clear and transparent if we are to address the chartered, let's say, CFA or content audience. I think at least you should also consider Labuan as an equally good candidate as Cayman BVI when you think about registers of your members. And I think the second part of this is that I think very uniquely and quite interesting is that I feel that Labuan is more progressive and more dynamic in its approaches towards crypto stuff, right? Because I feel that, for, let's say, the Cayman, because we were originally registered in Cayman Islands under the CIMA, I think they are pretty much familiar with the mode of having the company registered in Cayman Islands and somehow going to the public, let's say, in stock market in the US or in Hong Kong. So they're pretty much in compliance with those existing sets of rules, and they are reluctant to change. And in contrary, I think precisely because Labuan as an emerging region to challenge the status, it's more dynamical and it's more progressive, more willing to make adjustments to changes such as digital economies, as well as to treatments of virtual assets and cryptocurrencies, right? And this is very important. I think for crypto foundations, I would argue a huge amount or portion of assets they own are crypto assets, right? And these assets are, hard to price in exactly. And, these are sometimes self-issued assets by proof-of-stake network or systems. Then the foundation is to sell these assets in OTC market to get fiat or, stablecoin assets and so on. And these are very complicated cases to deal with. And this requires a lot of progressive forces and opinions to accommodate with. And I think these are the support that you can get from Labuan, but not in, the counterparty or similar jurisdictions you have. And the last thing here is, for foundations, a lot of times we're looking into working with public traded companies for treasury strategy firms, especially in the recent months, right? Starting with, the micro strategy of Michael Saylor back in a few years ago, to recently about SharpLink, organized by Consensus, which is an Ethereum strategy firm. And also, I think 2 weeks ago, you have the Dodge treasury firm. I think Labuan is very supportive of trying to have its very first public company, even if it's a derivative of the crypto treasury strategy. So I think these are all the novel and innovative aspects that Labuan governments or regulators are very willing to cooperate on, instead of trying to implement a, I would say, rather more restrictive frame as other jurisdictions will do, because they care more about rules and stuff. It's definitely the right thing to do, but not as friendly as Labuan.
That's very comprehensive. So for Serene, a follow-up question for you. Is there any framework Labuan can assist with foundations such as CAF?
Okay, so I think thank you, Junior, for the kind words about Labuan. Okay, so obviously as a jurisdiction, we always wanted to offer solution that is pragmatic and practical for industry players to actually work on. Because most important for us is that the jurisdiction, I mean the industry have to grow, and hence the jurisdictions come in to facilitate the business. This is always our approach. The most important is that while we are facilitating the business, the compliance and the international compliance, like what Perry is mentioning, that is something that we will prioritize as well. So having said that, when we talk about like CASPA Ecosystem Foundations, CAF, so obviously Labuan, we offered Labuan foundations as one of the solutions that they can, Junny can consider. So what happened is that if you look at some other jurisdictions, foundations will come in as maybe a company form. But in Labuan, we have a set of legislations, which is Foundations Act, Labuan Foundations Act. So this concept was actually adopted from a civil law jurisdictions. However, because we are common law country, that was actually, I would say, commercialized, become a common law jurisdiction adoption approach. So foundation is actually a legal entity. So obviously when we talk about succession planning, when we talk about asset management, I mean, commonly people will think, maybe I can hold it via a trust. But in Labuan, we offered both trust and foundations. And here we want to focus on foundation is a legal entity. So meaning that it can be sued and you can sue also. So that is very important. Most important is that I think we have to look at the governance. So the governing constituents for these foundations is actually the charter. So being a players or digital players, what we can do is that we can craft the charter to govern the foundations, which according to your operations, that suit your operations. So meaning that, for example, if you are running a blockchain, so what can you do, or crypto assets that we talk about? So your assets that endow into the foundations can be a crypto assets. So that is how it works. And then because you are the founders, there is ring fencing elements for you to actually protect your assets. So that is very important. So there's foundations. And we talk about just now compliance. So because you are a Labuan entities, and we actually comply with the international standards. That's very important when you are dealing with your counterparty internationally. The recognition is there. So foundation is very important maybe for Junny to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Serene. Moving on from business setup to actual operation and growing the businesses, what are the key strategic considerations operating in Labuan, including banking access and attracting talent? Could you please help us on this question as well?
Okay, so I think here we have to look at, once you have the license, I think the next phase is actually the executions. So meaning that you need to start to scale, you need to start to look at regional integrations. So that's very important. So here, what we can see is that Labuan can be your jurisdictions for license, for compliance, for governance. But having said that, we also have a kind of like marketing office or co-located presence that you can have it anywhere in Malaysia or even outside of Malaysia. Meaning that your Labuan will be your gateway to anchor your license and compliance, and you can have your talent, your business operations, the business development bit anywhere in Malaysia. That's very important. So Labuan as a gateway, Malaysia can provide you as an infrastructure solution as a whole. That's very important. So when we talk about banking, so we do have about I think close to 70 banks in Labuan. So some of them are offshore banks, some of them are Malaysian-based banks. So obviously, this is a global issue, I would say, banking account. Yeah, but having said that, the regulator is kind enough to keep on having a dialogue with the Labuan communities. So we understood that there are a few banks, they are very open for now. So they're willing to listen to your business plan, to understand what you have put in terms of the efforts, and they are willing to onboard digital players. And we do see success cases for digital exchange. We also see success cases for wallet and payment gateway.
Thank you, Serene. So next question is for you, Perry. How does obtaining a regulated status unlock partnership opportunities with local banks, financial institutions, or ecosystem players across the region?
Thanks. This question brings back to, I guess, a couple of years ago when crypto aren't so heavily regulated. And then we saw that there are signature banks that basically exchanges, regulated or not, can open a bank account and use them as a banking rails. And then there aren't so many regulatory or compliance requirements for onboarding a market makers or liquidity providers. But actually, well, going back to present tense, yeah, basically this is what the reality is, that regulation, well, countries, different jurisdictions have come up with their own regulations. And whether it is a payment-focused regulations, which is heavily focused on anti-money laundering, or to the other side, the other extreme, which is comprehensive, including investor protection and cybersecurity, and basically a comprehensive regime. So basically, having a regulated status, or basically having a license, a permit to operate, is actually very significant right now to have a proper relationship, a sustainable relationship with the banking partners. As Serene just said, Labuan basically have a lot of banking partners set up basically in the region, and having a stable banking partners actually can cater to a lot of business models like exchange or OTC business model, where you heavily related on the banking relationship to deliver your service to your clients. And there's other points that each VAS or each business look for, which Serene actually did talk about as well, which is the communication part. We do see regulation, jurisdiction, don't want to mention any country name here, but basically they only allows spot market products, or basically limited stable coins to only professional or accredited investors. So that is very strict and basically limits the profit or revenue generating room for any businesses. For me, to have a rigid or very certain regulatory certainty on what product to offer, or to choose from a jurisdiction that I can spend the time to communicate, to not educate, but actually communicate the sense that this product will fit in, will satisfy the anti-money laundering requirements, will satisfy the investors' protection, cybersecurity, and market integrity. Basically, I think if the dialogue is open, we can communicate those concepts with the regulators. Sooner or later, half a year, then basically a new product can basically go to market. And I think this is a more healthy relationship between businesses, compliance departments, and regulators. So basically that's generally what we're looking for.
Thank you, Perry. So our next question will delve into the next step for digital asset expansion in Asia. And our next question will be for Serene and Junny. How can Labuan's unique structures like foundations, PCCs, and special purpose vehicles help Web3 projects? Maybe we can start with Serene.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. So I think foundations, I have discussed about it earlier, so I will not touch on it. So, but what I want to share is on the protected cell company. So protected cell company, PCC, is very unique in Asia. So if you look at all other jurisdictions in Asia, I would say Labuan is the only jurisdiction that offer PCC structures. So PCC basically is like you have a core, where you establish a few cells under you. So what you do is that all the cells can ring fence in terms of the business, assets, and liability. So meaning that if I have a crypto assets in cell A, and I'm running a business, and I have another type of crypto asset in cell B, so this can be ring fenced. So anything happen to cell A will not be affecting the cell B. So it is very important. So that is in terms of investment fund. But however, we can also look at PCC as your risk management structures. So in Labuan, we offer PCC for captive. Captive is very unique, is that it's a self-insurance vehicle, it's alternative insurance options for corporates. When you are not an insurance provider, you can set up your own insurance unit within your company. Yeah, for an example now, in this area, I mean the digital perspective or digital space, there are a lot of risks, and it's very hard for you to get an insurance cover in the market, or even if you have it, it's very, very, I would say expensive, very pricey, but you know your risk better. And hence you run your insurance program yourself and you set up a captive and to insure your own risk. Subsequently, that risk will then reinsure into the global market. So this is where PCC can come in to help you. So PCC can be used for a fund. It can also be used for a captive. So that is very important. So when it comes to special purpose vehicle, I think that's quite common. It's just a SPV that you set up. You can use it to tokenize your asset, and you can use it to raise fund. So that is commonly used in Labuan as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Serene. Could you help us follow up on the question, Johnny?
Sure. I think before the technical questions, the discussion regarding the banks is already quite interesting. I feel a lot of times the crypto foundations would have a lot of difficulties, for instance, setting up the bank accounts because, again, they don't already possess too much fiat currencies or, let's say, stablecoin stuff. So I feel that a lot of ways, you can literally work with local banks if the government is, willing to endorse or to help with the due diligence process, apart from just letting the company or foundation themselves to provide more documents. That sometimes is an endless loop because everything you get for the bank, they ask for something else, and they will rely upon this creditor from another source, for instance, a local government office or ministry. I think that's quite important. So I feel that this is important. And the other thing is that I have to say that what's important for the foundation in the jurisdiction is not just the foundation itself, it's also about its partners, right? So there are a few things in here that, for instance, when Perry and Serene talked about stable coins, the stable coin business is important to any kind of public chain which might own a foundation, right? And it has to be made explicit that sometimes for, let's say, the SWIFT codes areas, they have to work with banks in that system with an IBAN code, but there are also, countries or regions not in that system that can still launch their stable coins. They have to look into banks in these regions. For instance, I can give a lot of names about large firms and companies that go into Australia or New Zealand to work with banks to issue stable coins. And working in Labuan, which means that you allow your partners to have bank partnerships in there, is also quite important. So that's like briefly the landscape, but also very quickly on the technical questions about SPVs and the legal and the content stuff. So I think a very unique advantage here is that when it has an SPV, again, it's not just about the foundational use of the SPV. It can be your client's use of the SPV, right? I'll give you an example here is about when it comes to market makers, and I'm quite sure that Perry is familiar with this topic as well. For instance, if a market maker, which is a regulated market maker, I won't mention specific names, but if it's a regulated market maker that is listed in the US stock market already, it usually wants sign an agreement of market making with you under the name of that US stock listed entity. The reason being that, let's say, if the market making is essentially about the loan of a crypto assets, for instance, Kaspa or BTC, right? And if you use the entity in the stock market, it means you have to have a lot to explain in your finance and assets balance shit, right? That, this loan has an interest rate and why you're taking an extra loan. And, the volatility of the price makes the value of the loan change quite drastically. And of course, by the way, usually in a market making agreement, you have an option structure, which makes things extremely complicated. So usually what's happening is that these US listed companies, and by the way, I keep mentioning about the US listed companies because I feel that for any jurisdiction like Labuan, it's in the end, by essence, facing the biggest capital market. So we have to care about those kind of things, right? So back to the topic is that, so if you have to work with the US listed, let's say, market makers, there are a few of them, right? Amber Group, Ant Alpha, those kind of people. Again, not specific names, but there's a class of them. They will usually do is that they will sign contract with you under the name of let's say, a BVI company, right? And you give the loan to the BVI company. And that actually introduces risk to the foundation part because, we don't really know who who we're lending money to, right? In the end of the day, what if this company says, oh, it has nothing to do with Amber Group or Ant Alpha or this US listed company? So usually the resolution is so complicated that you have to ask, let's say, a certified accountant, let's say in Cayman, to issue a register certificate, and then ask the director to sign a register of members, and then ask the HK, the Hong Kong Secretary Company Association, to give some additional documents, And I would argue in the end of the day, it's all about the indirect trust, about the proxy, right? And in Labuan, when, again, the office or certain other people who have credibility wants to help or assist with promise or the validity of the deal, things could have been a lot easier. So that's why when it comes to technical questions like setting an SPV, it's not just about, oh, what kind of SPVs the foundation wants to set for itself. It's also about, what kind of SPVs we can work with that allows for an expansional strategy of partnership establishment. So I think that's very important to us as well, yeah.
Serene, it seems like it's an ongoing rant about how complicated PCC's foundations or basically SPVs are. Anything to follow up to help him out?
Yeah, so I think here what we can see is that, as what I mentioned, is that as a jurisdictions, we are very open to understand how to make things more practical. So obviously then we hear you, Junny, and then, we will bring this back to the regulators and see how we can facilitate this further. Yeah, we're happy to do that. Okay.
Okay, since our time is running up, let's finish with a quick look ahead. How would each of you sum up Web3's progress so far in 2025? And what are you most excited or concerned about for the road ahead? Could you please start with maybe Perry?
Right. Last couple of minutes. I guess for 2025, the most exciting product that recently just surfaced is the X stock, basically the real world asset version stocks, basically listed on crypto exchanges, where people basically with limited exposure to US stocks, equities, basically they can buy it on the exchange right now, and basically they don't have to buy a whole share. They can just easily accessible and easily sell it back, and also they can actually withdraw as well. But so that's basically a portion of Outer Bay over there. But I think that our Web3 ecosystem is more leaning towards, as Junny actually mentioned about stable coins as well, that we are moving towards a more practical financial implications using the blockchain. How do we use the blockchain to actually make our lives better? T+3 to becomes T+1 or even real time. So basically that's basically what's excited about. But in terms of compliance, back to my industry, it's just that the speed of the movement, basically the speed of the movement of the money actually is lightning fast, and which increases law enforcement or how we confiscate, how we detect and prevent financial crime from happening or fraud. So basically this is especially one of the focus or challenges that, my area of expertise is looking at.
Please go ahead, Serene.
Yeah, so I think from myself is that what we can see from the train is that there are a lot of experimentations, kind of ideations now turning into reality, into applications. But however, this is one of the things that we are seeing is that I think earlier on, a lot of the digital players, when it first started, they are not looking at a regulated kind of jurisdictions. But however, over the times, I think we are also looking at some form of regulations here. However, I think as a jurisdiction, we also recognize the regulations have to come in as a bare minimum to set up a framework as a principle. However, that shouldn't kill innovations to grow. So that is our approach. So that the regulations will actually facilitate innovations. It's not killing. So this is what we are trying to see. And then also there is another thing is that we are seeing that there are so many jurisdictions now is trying to offer digital solutions or digital framework or digital regulations. But however, the interpretations in terms of, for example, a real asset, digital assets, all that are different. So it's very difficult for a digital players when you want to scale, especially close border. So this is the things that I think as a jurisdictions, we have to work with other jurisdictions and see how we can actually streamline it and make it more pragmatic and practical for the players to leverage on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Serene. Junny, can you also share with us your summary of the Web3 process this year?
So to be absolutely frank, that I feel the question to be weird because 2025 is like halfway here, right? And who are we to judge what's happening in 2025? But yeah, I feel one of the biggest takeaways is that it's about to be pretty much resistant to susceptibility to changes, right? Because look at what's happening in 2025 is, the Donald Trump's taking presidency and people think it's going to be a huge, great news for the cryptocurrencies, and originally it doesn't really that way. And then there's this tariff things and going up and down, and then, he's trying to be crypto-friendly again. So I feel like a lot of times what's happening in 2025 is that it reminds us of the fact that we are not necessarily the makers of the history, the creator of our history, right? We are not as powerful as President Trump. So I think what's pretty much important here is that we need to stay resistant and always stay relevant, facing the changes. And I think this is quite relevant to all of us sitting here. From the Casper Foundation, the primary originator of the project is from Israel, and the entire team has been largely affected by the warfare. And of course, for Labuan, it's about to be a new leading jurisdiction. And I guess for ViaBTC, it's also about being affected for, to dealing with clients from different regions under different categories of political treatment. So yeah, I feel that it's very important for us to always understand there's a lot of uncertainty still ahead, and always to follow up with the new changes to accommodate our strategies in accordance to what's going to happen. And for companies to maintain it's profitable, for us to maintain the technology is still to progress and the network is still safe. And for Labuan, maybe just again to keep staying innovative while staying compliant. So I guess that's my biggest predictions or concern for the upcoming year. Yeah.
Thank you to all of our panelists for the deep and diverse insight. And thank you to everyone for your time and engagement today. If you would like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to our panelists after this session. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much once again to all the panelists and also the moderator. Thank you very much for this wonderful, very interesting topic, which is the Labuan as a strategic launchpad, accelerating the digital asset services across Asia. All right, and this is the photography session. All right, just look at the camera, with the beautiful smiles. Well, I guess every one of us are benefited from the forum, from the discussion. We learn ideas, insights, and that's many, many more. Thank you once again to all of our panelists and also the moderator.